Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the world. As a lot of you probably already know, my name is Zach Jones. Welcome back to my channel, but if you're new to my channel, then welcome. As I mentioned in some previous PowerPoint presentations, I'm remastering some previous PowerPoints, and this one is probably the most important one that I've had requested to be refilmed a fair bit. And I'm going to say now, this is the third or fourth and final time that I am remastering this. It's animals that are victims of poaching and at risk of extinction. As many of you probably know, I've been passionate, fascinated and bordering on obsessed with the natural world, but particularly birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and even extinct animals ever since I was a boy. But over the last few years I've also developed an interest in insects, but today I'm choosing animals from Africa and Asia that are most at risk of extinction because of humans. But also I will be talking about what we can do to save them, as well as using examples of animals that went extinct in the past because of us humans as examples. I'm going to start with Africa, and I'm going to start with the largest land mammal, the forest elephant. Now, forest elephants may look like the savanna elephants you see across Africa, but they are their own separate species, and these ones are shorter in stature, they have straighter tusks to help them move through their forest home, and also they tend to live in herds of only about 10 to 15 animals, but what they lack in stature to their savanna cousins, they make up for it with a very fierce and fiery temper. And that is mainly down to us, because forest elephants are now more at risk of poaching, at risk from poachers than their savanna cousins. And in fact, elephants all over Africa are in trouble because of poachers, and it's all for the same thing, their tusks. Now, elephant tusks are made of a substance called ivory, and ivory is a banned substance in much of the world, but it's still in demand in many places like China, Vietnam, Taiwan, the Middle East, and of course in other parts of the world. Because although ivory is banned, poachers are still killing elephants for their ivory, and of course, forest elephants are more heavily persecuted because their tusks are made of a much denser ivory with a rosy pink hue, and it's easier to carve, so that's in heavier demand from ivory dealers. And of course, the main people that are responsible for this is China, because the Chinese want elephant ivory for chopsticks, necklaces, jewellery and ornaments, and even in the Middle East, they are used as Arabian dagger hilts. And of course, it's meant now that there's probably only 100,000 forest elephants left in Africa. And of course, that is, while they are persecuted by humans, it's not just bad for the elephants, it's also bad for the habitat they live in, because elephants are habitat formers. For one thing, they take out the smallest saplings and they leave big open spaces for the other bigger trees to flourish. They create the paths that human beings and other animals walk on. And also, they actually have a very unique relationship with western lowland gorillas, because they actually help these animals get to the fruits they need in order to survive. But also, in times of drought, elephants will use their trunks and their tusks to dig holes to get to water, which no other animal can get to. And another thing is they actually help keep the forests that they live in growing, because when you look at elephant dung, I mean, it looks gross, but it isn't, because when you look at elephant dung, much of the plant vegetation passes through the stomach virtually unchanged. They can't digest plant wall cellulose. Cows can do it, elephants can't, and that's quite often why they have to feed for 16 hours a day. And of course, quite often their droppings carry the seeds of the plants that they eat, and that can help the forest and the savannas grow. And of course, because the forest elephants are so heavily persecuted by man for their ivory, it is one of the main reasons why these animals are much more bad-tempered than their savannah cousins. But there are people working to protect them, like with the anti-poaching squads, which I will talk about in a bit. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is probably the African animal that is most famous for being persecuted by poachers. It is the rhino. To be precise, the black and white rhino. Now, how you tell these ones apart is that, because it's not down to their colour, because my mum spent a large part of her childhood in Africa, and she actually told me that the name Black and White Rhino was actually a mistranslation by Europeans. Of course, how you tell them apart is you look at the mouth. A white rhino here has a very flat mouth because it's a grazer, which means it feeds on grass. But a black rhino has a beak-shaped mouth because it's a browser and feeds on low shrubs and trees. And it can actually snap off branches as thick around as my arm. But rhinos are found throughout Africa and Asia. They come in all different shapes and sizes, but they all share horns as well as a very ferocious temper. And of course, another thing about the white rhino is that they're the more sociable of the rhino and are usually found in big groups. Another thing about rhinos is they have a very, very keen sense of smell and hearing, but they don't have very good eyesight because their eyesight is poor and they're easily surprised. And of course, they will charge at anything that surprises them, be that predators or people. But every species that's found throughout Africa and Asia are in terrible trouble, and it's all for their horns. Now, rhino horn is made of a substance called keratin. It's the same substance that our fingernails and our hair are made of. But people like the Chinese, who are completely idiotic, believe it has medicinal purposes when there is absolutely no scientific proof that it works. I mean, as my mum pointed out, if keratin had medicinal purposes, you just need to chew on your fingernails. But regardless, the Chinese want the rhino horn for the medicine market. But also, as well as China, there's also Vietnam, Taiwan, Cambodia, and the Middle East who want rhino horn for Arabian dagger hilts, as well as for things like trinkets or ornaments, or even have it ground up and served in drinks. Of course, believe it or not, rhino horn can actually fetch about $60,000 US per kilo. And because of that, these animals are being absolutely slaughtered by poachers who run them down with helicopters, shoot them down with AK-47 machine guns, and then hack off their horns with chainsaws. And it's not just the adult rhinos that are affected. Quite often, rhino calves, when their mothers are killed, they're just left out in the wilderness to die because their horns haven't developed yet, and an orphaned rhino calf in the wilds of Africa would be an easy meal for lions, hyenas, wild dogs. But people are rescuing rhinos, or rhino sanctuaries are managing to rescue them. But even so, it's not really ideal because the rhino calves need to be with their mothers. Of course, there has been a massive effort to protect rhinos across the world, or well, across Africa, like with armed patrols and the anti-poaching squads monitoring their movements. And of course, there's already been one species of rhino that I know of, the northern white rhino, that has now been declared extinct because the last two left are female and they can't reproduce. So a species that has been around on planet Earth for millions of years, has been through the ice ages, seen mankind evolve, has now been declared extinct. But with the southern white rhino, around the 1960s, numbers of southern white rhinos dropped to as little as 30 left, or 30 individuals left in the wild. But what followed was one of the most successful conservation success stories. And now, although the southern white rhino is no longer declared endangered, it is considered vulnerable. But there are more than 1,000 of these mighty beasts roaming southern Africa. Even so, poachers who do go to kill rhinos quite often end up being killed themselves, because if their shots don't kill the rhino, that means they will charge and gore them with their horn. But of course, I have very little sympathy for them if that happens to them. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is probably the most trafficked animal on the planet. It is the pangolin. And yes, you are looking at a real animal. Now, pangolins are found throughout Africa and Asia, but they're not reptiles at all. They're actually in the same family as armadillos, aardvarks and anteaters, but they are the only reptile, or the only mammals to be purely covered in scales. And those scales are made of keratin, like our fingernails, and they're all down to what the pangolin feeds on, because pangolins are specialists in ants and termites, because what they will do is they will use those ridiculously long claws to break open a termite mound or even an anthill, and then use their ridiculously long tongue that can be longer than their body to lap up dozens of ants and termites, and the scales protect them from the bites and stings of their prey. But unfortunately, every species of pangolin that's found throughout Africa and Asia is now in trouble. Pangolins are now the most heavily trafficked animals on the planet. I mean, the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Taiwan, and of course Japan and North Korea and the Middle East want their scales for ornaments, but also for medicines, which, as I've mentioned before, do not work at all, but also for pangolin meat to be sold through the bushmeat trade, because that's seen as a delicacy. And of course, one of the reasons why pangolins are so heavily persecuted is because their defence mechanism is to roll themselves up into a tight ball, protect their soft underbelly, and that makes it easy for poachers to just pick them up, put them in a sack and carry them away. And if this carries on, then pangolins are just going to be absolutely wiped out in all their range. And now, the next animals I'm going to show you are some of the most misunderstood but also important of all creatures, vultures. Now, vultures are found across many parts of the world, but these ones are found in Africa and Asia. And of course, to many people, vultures aren't your idea of a very nice looking creature, but I just think that they are gorgeous. And of course, vultures are some of the most important of all creatures because they're named the undertakers of the bush, because when an animal dies in Africa or Asia, the vultures will fly in, they consume all the rotting meat, and of course that helps prevent the spread of diseases like Ebola, botulism, tuberculosis, malaria, E. coli, but and of course many other nasty diseases. but it's their scavenging nature that has been